Good evening, everybody. I know I am quite late today, but we're finally back to Book of Hours, which I know a number of you are looking forward to. So, let me just take a quick second to bring everything up the way it should be. There's actually some good streamers on right now, too. So, I noticed Elkanu's playing Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate. Darillion is playing Grand Theft Auto 5, and Salfea looks like she just started House Flipper 2, which I happen to know she quite enjoys. So, not that I'm trying to discourage all of you from checking out the channel, but I I was mildly tempted just not to just to watch instead of stream myself. But I've really been looking forward to getting back to Book of Hours. And for those of you who didn't for those of you that haven't been following the Christmas announcements, there was a little something that they sent out to the mailing list about some of the future plans for the game. So it's certainly not news to the people watching the broadcast that there will be DLC coming out in 2024. Books of the Memory Which Does Not Die, inscribed in 5 languages over the gate of Hush House. Go quietly. Book of Hours is a forgiving sort of game. If you're worried you might be stuck, there's usually another way. So not too much to report as far as the news or any of the other details. Actually, you know what? It occurred to me that I read one of the letters in The Secret, and then I never really followed up on any of those. So I'll try and make sure that I do one of those sometime tonight. I forgot to take out my tablet. I'm sure I don't think it's that far away, so I'll grab it when I need it. But yeah, House of Light is I'm pretty sure that's the name of it, is the first DLC. They don't have a date beyond 2024, but I'm already completely captured by Weather Factory. They make great games. I think they're really interesting, very nice people behind it. Again, I always feel a little bad whenever I make a point through a negative contrast, and I feel I've done that a little bit more often than I want, but the last couple of years has definitely given rise to a number of developers or publishers who it feels like I have a good relationship with, and then it's not just that it ends, but it tends to end in fairly negative ways. So a very common thing I've noticed for a streamer of my size will be essentially you'll never hear no from someone. What will happen though is you'll have someone where you establish a fairly good relationship, and then one day, almost seemingly at random, you just don't hear back from people. And the worst example of this is actually someone who, there was obviously a change in terms of policy. They sort of said, hey, I've normally covered these games. I'd love to cover them in future. It does seem that this new policy doesn't cover me. And, I get it. If this is the end, that's the end. But if you would like to continue with the game, I would be interested in continuing to broadcast it. But I am going to need a key. And I actually had one where they said, yep, okay, just wait until release, send us an email, and we'll give you a key. And then after a couple of emails, just no reply back. So that was the worst case by far, because it actually put me in a really tough spot in terms of working out a schedule. But essentially, this is the sort of thing that someone of my size needs to deal with, and unfortunately deal with on a fairly regular basis, even with people who, it feels like things are going very well with. And there is a considerable difference with Weather Factory in the sense that, if anything, over that same period, they've actually given me more opportunities in terms of covering their games. And this is also at the same time when I think it's very fair to say that they have gotten the attention of some fairly considerable broadcasters. One of the things that's been really delightful about Book of Hours is just to see how many more people who previously haven't played any Weather Factory games, have gone and have kind of taken a look at it. And I really would hope that I would never turn into the sort of person who's like, well, I did this before, now all these popular people are coming in. It really is wonderful that even people who I would never have imagined, looking twice at games like this, are not just playing them, but they're actually really getting into them. And to me, that is a really good thing, because it's just sort of this validation that, Weather Factory really has found this special area of a type of game that you really can't find anywhere else. And it turns out that there is a much larger group of people who are into it than maybe you would have previously imagined. Hello, Baron Snugs. Good morning to you. It's evening for myself, but I recognize that this may change depending on where you are in the world. So with that in mind, I didn't want to, like I said, I do often feel bad when I have to make a case sort of through negative form, but I was going to say, in addition to the fact that Weather Factory makes a very unique type of game, and they do so, they do it in an interesting way, sort of they do this sort of open development. They have a number of different sort of products and approaches to things that you don't often see from other developers. So for instance, there's a fun podcast that they do. Some of the blog entries are very interesting. If you follow the newsletter, and I highly recommend you do, there will be sort of the things that are on Alexis's mind at the bottom, and you'll just learn more about the world. And it's fun. Like it to me, it's one of the more rewarding ways to be a fan. The more you follow this game, the more you just kind of learn about strange things you never even would have checked out. Fair enough. Either way, good to see you, Barrett Snugs. So yeah, again, like I said, I do sometimes feel bad to make the negative case, but one thing for me, and again, it's not like I have a whole lot of weight on these things, but one notable way in which Weather Factory has distinguished themselves from other groups, and they're certainly not the only one, there are, and I think it's fairly clear, I like to sing the praises of these developers when the opportunity arises, but, in at the same time when there are other people who are seeing some success and that's sort of translating into, okay, well, we don't really feel the need to supply you keys anymore. I have been very lucky in the sense that they have, continued to allow me to cover their games. Well, I mean, obviously, I think they've been quite encouraging in terms of covering games, but for me, they sent me a key for Book of Hours. I was given the opportunity to do the Steam stream. They graciously agreed to be interviewed for GOG. Again, these are things that I can't necessarily take for granted from other developers, and I think it's incredibly kind of them that, as generally there is more attention to their games and them, these are not necessarily doors that have been closed to me. And for what it's worth, it's something that I like to sort of talk up. So actually, on that note, Weather Factory is design, writing, and coding, Alexis Kennedy. Art, production, marketing, Lottie Bevan. We salute our collaborators, Roman Loskudov, Knights of Unity, and FRGM for additional coding. Additional art, Adrian Degan, Clockwork Cuckoo, and Catherine Unger. Music, which is now available for purchase on Steam. You can also listen to the soundtrack on Spotify and iTunes, Apple Music. And I believe there is also a version of it on YouTube. But music by Meramith Solomon, Brett Barkman, and Mickey Mar Productions Limited, R.I.P. Mickey Erb, and sound effects by Soundcuts. And I do want to give due credit to the Steam page localization as well as the special thanks. There are a few names that I sort of recognize from the previous credits, slightly different formulations, but I think I can decipher most of them. But in any case, it's nice to give credit where credit is due. And of course, it is a convenient way for me to point out that, of course, I was given a copy for promotional purposes. I think probably we're past the point where, it like, if you don't know that I'm, I was given a key for promotional purposes, I think most people have gotten what they needed out of it. But because there isn't a firm guideline in terms of those things, I figure it doesn't hurt to, to remind people. It doesn't take that long, and it lets me sing the praises of the people who made the game. Now, I am going to need a little bit of runway just to sort of figure out what's going on again. Occasionally, Baron Snugs. I mean, the thing is, I don't like. So number one, there is just a certain way of like you never want to. At least my temperament is such as like there's a way that sometimes people talk about talking with other people, that is just another variation of name dropping. So like I don't necessarily want to. I don't want that to imply anything more than it really is. But yeah, we have definitely exchanged emails, and there's. Like, in some cases, actually, it's been really helpful for just getting a little bit of an idea in terms of... Actually, I mean, I remember there was one that wound up being related to a job thing I was thinking on, which was really nice. But the other thing is, one of my favorite times to interact with Weather Factory, and I still occasionally... fill these out. I'm not as often as I should because I'm a terrible tech support rep or bug reporter or whatever. But it's actually the bug reports have been some of my favorite interactions with Weather Factory, and oddly enough, I think that might be. It was with Failbetter, but it might have actually been the very first email I ever got from Lottie was in response to something I reported for Sunless Skies. But yeah, no, I do occasionally hear from them. But the other challenge is that I'm not good with brevity, and that's true for like blogs and emails. And so... if it's really important, I try to keep it very short and like labeled as such. And if it's longer and maybe less urgent, I also try and communicate, the world's not going to come to an end if you don't say anything on this. Obviously, people don't need their permission, to reply or not reply to me. But I just find it, helpful to, if I can't do it short, to at least give people what they need. But yeah, the simple answer to your question is I do occasionally hear from them, most often through exchanging bug stuff, but every once in a while I'll have... The one thing I really like about them is that I have occasionally had a couple of sort of dev-ish related questions. So it's, again, I never want to abuse the access that I have to people, because there are definitely a few people in game development that I am lucky enough that I know them through one way or another, but I would never really want to get to a point where like every day I'm harassing them with another question. So like a good example of this would be I put out a tweet a little while ago saying, hey, I'm looking for sort of some verification of a few different multiples that I have. So I've been trying to write an article, kind of trying to do a short version of my productivity article. Like basically it's like, hey, can I get somebody to do a sanity check on like these numbers? Because essentially the exercise I'm doing in that article is if I go online and I try to find a number of things that I think would be helpful to plan out a game, budget wise, what are the numbers that come out? And I've done that. I actually have a spreadsheet that can like, adjust the numbers and things like that. But the thing is, these could be completely invented numbers. They may be completely inappropriate. So, I sent out a tweet saying, it's like, hey, is there somebody that I could get to, maybe give a once over on this? And just to give you an idea in terms of where I am on the picking order, absolutely nobody... Well, so I don't want to say nobody replied to that. Actually, somebody was very nice enough in recommending a name. But in the end, like, I don't want to be bothering people with that sort of stuff because it's not relevant to their games, right? It's a favor. And so if I'm asking a favor for someone, I figure like an opt-in in a tweet is a little bit nicer than like sending out 20 emails to people just so I can get an article done, right? If it's going to be an article, hopefully it would be for a publication which can serve as PR for them. So, insofar as influence is measured by like, I don't know, you can get someone on the phone, I'm just like any other schmo. But yeah, it is. I will say, like, I also don't want to so you're very kind in what you're saying, Baron Snugs. I will definitely say in the interactions I have had with Weather Factory, they have been very, very nice people. Like, I've really enjoyed interacting with them. And one of the things I like very much about Skeleton Songs is that it really communicates the type of personality that you kind of imagine behind the emails or the blog posts or something like that. You know, so, you know, it just happens to be a nice open way that everybody can experience that. So, but yeah, no, it's just, I realize I'm spending way too much time answering your question than is necessary, but I always realize that there's a certain implication when someone says you chat with the devs, and it's like, you know, I have exchanged emails, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to imply, you know, I'm going to parties, you know, rubbing shoulders with the greats. So, but I think everybody's figured that out by now. So. Yeah, so that's actually one thing that I'm careful on. So I don't like anything about the Secret Histories setting I know about. I have found out the same way everybody else does, which is to play the game, look at the like the blogs, the Reddit posts, things like that. Usually the stuff we'll talk about will be more related to like, hey, would you like to do this broadcast for us? And, you know, me saying, of course, I'll always do broadcasts for you. So yeah, I definitely don't have any privileged, I don't have any privileged information about the game. And presumably if I did, I wouldn't want to turn that into, some kind of a competitive advantage in terms of streaming, just because, you know, presumably that sort of stuff is given in confidence. I generally assume that if a developer wants something to be known, they will say it. And if they don't want something to be known, they'll say it. In fact, I won't say who the developer is. There is a case of a developer that's actually given me access to their Steam workshop. And the big thing about that is that if you start telling everyone you have a secret, then you just have that much more temptation to let the secret be known, right? Whereas if nobody knows you know it, you can't get into that position where you betray the confidence. So yeah, with that in mind, you know, I that's not that hard for me to deal with, because in terms of work, I very often have to deal with data that's not necessarily publicly available. And I have the structures in place to make sure that there isn't sort of the cross-contamination. And then when I'm talking about topics, there will be the, you know, here is what I know as a student of this subject, and then if I am within the confines of that environment in which people have the appropriate clearance, and like I'm not trying. I realize when we say clearance, like this isn't nearly as interesting as that sounds, right? It's more like, you know, did you sign the form? Did you have the, you know, did the boss basically say you're allowed to see this thing? But basically, once we're in those situations, at that point, then I can sort of invoke, okay, so we know X, Y, and Z because, you know, and then you can point to a data point. But it's, in my own case at least, it's never really been that hard to draw the line. And like, even in terms of gaming stuff, right? Like, I get annoyed by some of the stuff that you'll see on, you'll see on common like gaming chats or something like that. But I've never been of the temperament where it's like, oh, I'm really going to show this guy what's what, and, you know, like share the secret information to win an argument online. That's just like, at that point, who are you really trying to impress there? So for that sort of stuff, it's, you know, I suppose the nice thing to say, the easiest thing for me to say was that even if I knew something special, I wouldn't say. But in this particular case here, there just isn't a need for me to. There isn't really anything for me to know. It would be insulting to Weather Factory to say that I haven't gotten insight from them, because they are very smart and talented people, and so it's very hard not to find, you know, wisdom from people like that. But I have no privileged information about the Secret Histories from talking with them, and I kind of recognize the fact that they, so like for the Kickstarter for Cultist Simulator, one of the Kickstarter backer tiers was to answer a lore question for anything that they'd previously done, including like fail better stuff. So I've like, number one, I just haven't asked, but number two, I've always kind of felt like that would maybe be asking a little bit too much, because I don't know if there's going to be a Kickstarter in the future, but it would seem to me a little unkind to put someone in a situation where they have fundraised off of a particular thing, and then essentially, even if it's not intended that way, to sort of say, hey, can you give me one for free? I can pay like everybody else for that sort of stuff. But I do know they also do like AMAs every once in a while, so. Okay, now my filibustering hasn't been completely wasted because I have gotten familiar with the area. So it's also worth saying, for those of you unfamiliar with it, over Christmas there was the 25 days of special reveals. All of these are now on the tree by Reverend Timothy. I believe this will be going away in a couple of days, so we should be sure to load up. But we've got Rose Pearl, we've got an Awakened Feather, we have a Cronsicord, we have Moli, we've got January Sanguinary, the True Blood of St. Januarius, a Flushed Mommet, a Dear Day Lens, Ham! This one I actually was... Oh, sorry, I forgot. The Sea Glass and the Ambergris Chunk. Seasonal event, yes. So this one is rather special for me because there is a broadcaster who I am quite fond of watching. I, in fact, found her through Book of Hours. Prosciutto Fist. She's been doing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 lately, but does occasionally go back to Book of Hours. In fact, stopped by the channel the other day, and it was really fun to hear her describe some of the aspects, because based on her own exposure, she has her own names for things. So, for instance, for Sky, it's blue, and I believe Grail is chair, and I'm not sure if it's because of the icon or because one of the first Grail aspects she ran into was a chair. But one way or the other, it's actually really fun to do the pro to... It's fun to do the pro to Secret Histories Dictionary. But on top of that, Prosciutto Fist, prosciutto the ham, like it's a fun little play on it's a fun little play on ham-fisted. So I mean, that's already a great that on its own is a reason to check out a broadcaster, right? If they have a clever name like System Shock, you might want to see what's going on. So with that in mind, I had to leave a quick message in her Discord saying, it's like, just so you know, there's a seasonal event going on in Book of Hours, and there will be some stuff on a Christmas tree. By the way, the reason I'm mentioning this right now is today's was ham, so I really did, I absolutely thought of Prosciutto Fist as soon as the ham became available. So. And sure enough, she actually wound up playing Book of Hours. I have no idea if she got to the Christmas tree or not, but that's a fun one. And again, that's another example of the sort of stuff that I really like about Book of Hours and the Secret Histories, because they are the sorts of things that you can sort of build. You think there's an item referencing me? I don't think so. I mean... It would be very amusing if they put a piece of chalk that that was incapable of writing, less than 1,000 words on any subject. That might be a little too on the nose. But no, I don't think so. There's certainly characters I share traits with, though. So Reverend Timothy, who takes 45 seconds where everybody else takes 30 seconds. I don't always need to listen to him, but I'm often glad when I'm due. I'm like, I know exactly what it's like to be that guy. But yeah, no, I think that's a reflection of, I think that's what a reflection of what the setting really does well, right? Is that there's always things that you can find and you can draw from your own life. And in some cases, it's, I know a guy like that. but I'm not so completely lost to my own temperament that I can't look at a character like Reverend Timothy and see myself in someone like that. You know, likewise for myself, I relate a lot more to things like Lantern, and I maybe relate. And again, I can't say that I don't relate to any of the aspects. Right, the aspects have their own their sort of fragments of reality, and of course, we're more than just a single node. But obviously, I will relate a little bit more to lantern-y kind of things because that's my temperament. Whereas Winter, you know, I'll have my own kind of gloom. I think everybody's sort of familiar with these things, but I wouldn't necessarily say that Winter is such a primary. I feel a primary connection to Winter as I do something like Lantern. My top three would probably be Lantern, Edge, or Lantern, Nock, and Edge. And then out of the new powers, or aspects or whatever the names would be, probably Sky is the one that I relate to the most. But anyways, for those of you not familiar with the seasonal event, if you hop on in and get to Winter, you can pick up a bunch of goodies off of the tree. So we've got rose pearls, surprisingly common in these waters. An awakened feather, alive to every draft and spark. So I haven't left myself too much room in my inventory, so I will drop a few things off. Now I thought we had room for rose pearl already, but apparently not. Also, these are a gem, so these are probably more appropriate in the other room. Lots of feathers. I actually don't think I have any room for feathers here. Okay, let's put the pears in the water down for now. Oop. Incidentally, Baron Snugs, if you find one that you think might be, I would be interested in hearing it. Moly the gods call it, and it is hard for mortal men to dig, but with the gods all things are possible. Homer. Chronsicord, a music box that only performs once, a typewriter that can only send one message, a clock that can only strike now. January Sanguinary, also called Sanguis Sultandis, or by the ignorantly superstitious, the true blood of Saint Januarius. And Sea Glass, smooth as an egg, frosted like a winter window. By the way, this is, I know I keep saying this is probably one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack. I do not dislike any track on the soundtrack, but it's definitely hard. It's hard for me not to maybe want to repeat the track when this one comes on. Okay, what else do we have? Ambergris Chunk. Never, never, never call it whale vomit. The Flushed Mommet, a crimson-stained little cloth doll with merry button eyes and a frill of twitching ribbons. The Dear Day Lens, a fiendishly simple and wretchedly fragile optical device. A canned ham. I actually also really like the pig icon on it. The taste will remain reliably unchanged for many years to come, which is, in some respects, an advantage. Okay. It's nice to have a couple of other places to put this stuff. See, if I was smart, one thing I should do is load up all of my saves for future playthroughs now when there's going to be all the stuff in the tree, so I can start off with a big advantage in terms of stuff in Hush House. But I sort of feel like that's kind of defeating the purpose of the Christmas content. So I will resist the urge to load up. All right, and then we have two more. Mackerel, eat it while it's fresh or keep it while it's salted. And finally, this was the Christmas present. Uzalt, the ink in which the first history was recorded by the unwise mortal. Uzalt is the bright yellow gold of lantern. Light lingers on it for a little while, even in the dark. Gold is not needed to mix Uzalt, but amber is. Unobtrusive shrines to Uzalt could sometimes be found in the churches of the unconquered sun. Use an Encastum ink with your journal to make determinations and record histories. If the hours listen, the world changes. Now, actually, Sweeps the Pillow Clean, who is another very nice broadcaster who, I found through the arrival of Book of Hours. Although I think probably they'd done some Cultist Simulator, if I'm not mistaken. I do actually have a slight suspicion I may have met them once in the real world. But if they are the person who I think they are, I also know that they wished to keep a certain degree of anonymity. And so it strikes me that the appropriate thing to do if you find yourself in a situation like that is not to ask questions. Right? It's like if you think you've run into someone who, if it is the same person, told you, I prefer to remain anonymous, probably the next question you don't want to ask is, hey, were you that person who wanted to remain anonymous? So, but I've been wondering ever since I had a slight indication. But in any case, whether this is the person I'm thinking or not, as a broadcaster, they're a wonderful broadcaster. In fact, they are the reason we played that King game. And I had a lot of fun with that. But Sweeps the Pillow Clean did a wonderful job of it. But from what I understand, they've made their first determination. They did not go for the same determination I went for. So they went for white the first flower. I chose red the first flower. But, well, takes all kinds. I also don't think they're playing the Twiceborn, so. Okay, now, I believe we have investigated the whole Kukurbet, and I think we've been making pretty steady progress through the caves. So if memory serves, we sort of went through all of these areas. In terms of items to investigate, yeah, I think that's... Actually, I think we may have already hit the edge. Because there's no real items to check in these individual ones. So yeah, I think probably... Oh, that's right. Actually, I'm completely... I've completely lost it. I was looking at consumable items, but consumable items are a little bit harder to justify just because they don't always... Hello, Vanguard Master. I'm glad that you found the write-up useful. It was a little later getting sent off, but I was writing most of that. While I was walking, and it was really cold, so I kept making typos. But I suspected I was probably mostly touching on stuff that you and your partner It's so weird to call one of you by their name and then the other one by their alias. but yeah, I wasn't entirely sure that I'd be saying anything new, but I figured at the very least I could confine it to one set of sort of prices that we were talking about, and if it just wound up being confirming, what you were already going to do, well, that's actually not that bad, right? Sometimes just being able to verify a particular path is sort of worth it in its own way. But on the odd chance that maybe there was something new that you could get, or something new to be done, it's helpful. It's also very nice that you asked me for my economic perspective, because very often what will happen is I'll provide an economic perspective and then I will proceed to be attacked for having an opinion that I didn't actually have. So obviously, some of my stuff just does sort of count as opinion on that. But there's also just an advantage in terms of sort of taking that outside perspective on stuff. Sometimes just having that validation, sometimes being able to say, okay, yes, this is the way we were thinking about it. Or also to say, it's like, okay, so someone disagreed, but, here's the bit of the puzzle that they're missing. Especially too, because you have a financial stake in the outcome and I don't. Just being able to sort of bounce the idea off of someone is helpful. So I appreciate being asked, and more importantly, I hope that it is helpful, because certainly there's a lot of opinions on games that go around, and not all of them are made equally. Okay, so there are a few items that I would like to do some individual checks on. So I was interested in what came up with Solomon's preparation. It actually gave a specific kind of a specific bit of information about the 9th of January 1838. And I'm trying to remember if it was on this playthrough or on the other one, but I actually have a couple of ideas about the significance of this stuff, but I'd rather keep it under my hat for a while. I did discover something over the course of my YouTube playthrough, which I might even take advantage of today. But I think the first thing I'm going to do is wait to see what's happening with the affair of the particular Mystique. With a little bit of luck, maybe we will wind up with someone who understands Ramsund, or I forget the other one, Kernvek Henevek, which is the I still have a few things I'd like to read. I'm particularly interested in Ramsund because of the turquoise hand and the possibility that there may be another Newman that we can take advantage of. And then at some point I would like to sort of mess around at least with the altar of Saint Tentretto, although there are potentially... So I've never been able to quite figure out what's going on with the Columbic sarcophagus. There's definitely a few things that I'd like to check out in terms of recipes and just messing around with a few different items, but those I figure are going to be things that I do over time. For now, let's just unpause. Maybe we'll bring Mrs... Actually, I guess it would be Reverend Timothy, because we can get him for free. We'll have a chat with Reverend Timothy. Reverend Timothy's door is always open to me. Timothy will offer help for free as a friend. Say thank you for all the presents under the tree. And yeah, we'll see what the mystery brings first, and then we will we'll work the day accordingly. Oh, and it's a foggy day, so good day for Knock and Moon if it comes up. Reverend Timothy always jumps at the offer of my company. Reverend Timothy, rector of Brandkrug, ordained by the Church of the Unconquered Sun, a learned man, blessed in the tally, the gate, and the light. Let's have a chat with him. Reverend Timothy is always, always happy to chat. Add an element of the soul to enhance Reverend Timothy's effectiveness for the day, or just talk. It is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. Speaking of, I may want to put the kettle on and make some more tea. I won't do that right away, but... I completely forgot we had this. Okay, I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. Old moment, you've had them too, those moments when we seem to look out at the world through another's eyes. What if those moments were real? Now, I have a little bit of a dilemma in terms of how the day is going to go. So, one of the reasons why I've been hanging on to all of these memories is so that I can mess around with the various... like skills, and then the one thing I would like to do is just get that list of skills that I want to try and fill in the gaps on. And my hope is that now that I have the orichalcum wire, I'm going to be able to sort of unlock a few extra recipes. But on the other hand, I'm also getting impatient enough for Enuma that I might start dipping into my collection of porphyrin. So if I bring Numa too soon, then it means that I lose all of these very helpful memories. And if I if I wait too long, then it means that we have these long idle days where not a whole lot is happening. So I'll find a balance between the two, but that's going to be one of the things that I'm working on in future. And one of the things I would sort of like to do is I'd like to have a little bit more variety in terms of the different things that I'm attempting. So, for instance, I haven't really used the necropsy table that much. I don't think I've ever used the sarcophagus at all. And one of the things I'm sort of hoping to do, and then like the altar of Saint Tintretto, one of the things that I can do, if I had a little bit more variety in terms of the different areas that I'm sort of performing tasks on, it means those chances that I find something interesting, like those chances that I find a treasure of the house that I hadn't considered before. If I have the variety in terms of the locations, there's the higher likelihood that I'm going to discover the secret. So, for instance, there was one area that I discovered a treasure of the house just simply because I was looking to try and make the most of an element of the soul in by the end of the day. And it just so happens that the combination that I was looking for gave me one of the treasures. In fact, that also happened at the Oubliette. I was looking for one thing, and it turns out I found another one. And usually I wind up finding the book that sort of makes the puzzle make sense after the fact, but you can never really know at the time. Oh, Dr. Southey is here, so she knows Kate Kennebec and Erica Payan. However, my rule has always been we've got an unbroken series of fulfilling people's requests. So in this case, I will satisfy Dr. Southey's request, even though it means that I don't get the language. I don't need to listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't really even expect me to, but I am often glad when I do. So we'll hold on to Reverend Timothy for a little while. I think what we'll do is we will talk with Dr. Southey about matters in the world first. So the affair of the particular mystique, the Suppression Bureau has a growing interest in the recent fad for unconventional, often prophetic religious movements. No laws have been broken, nothing sinister has come to light. All these movements are comfortingly solar in nature, but there does seem to be something going on. Visitors with an interest in winter or lantern mysteries will want to talk about this. Dr. Yvette Southey, playwright, philologist, psychoanalyst, as happy with questions as with answers. For those of you who do not know, philologist, it is the art of reading very slowly. Hello there, got a moment? On the particular mystique, funniest thing, I keep getting speaking invitations from this very odd little outfit, Church of the Ivory Dawn. And, well, you'll laugh, librarian. try this book with as much Mystery Winter as their winter interest. So again, Dr. Southey knows Ericapean, Kernwek, Kennebec, and Latin, and they are looking for Winter 6, so we are starting to get to some of the tougher winter texts. So Annals of St. Brendan's will not do in this case. I'm reluctant to use the exercises in the continuity of self here just because that's too higher than what it could be. Ideally, I'd be able to take advantage of one more Winter 6 book if it comes down to it. I suppose I need to find the White Book of Brittany for that to be winter. This is a bit of a dilemma I have with the playthrough. Like, clearly I have more than enough to get the win, and I've had that for a while. But you know, do I pack it in before I have all of the books? That feels like a very long playthrough. But yeah, I mean, what do you do, right? Do you declare, you know, 80% of the books? How do you know you have 80%? You know, it's a tough one to figure out. Now, fortunately, I have other things that I want to do, so I don't need to worry too much about the, you know, any arbitrary rules like that yet. But I'm going to need to think about it eventually. It may be that there are no 6 winter books for me. I'm going to take one more pass through the library just to make sure. So Gymnaiad would be too high anyway. Can't see Traveling at Night or Locksmith's Dream being winter, but you never know. Oops. Okay, Annals of St. Brendan's doesn't do the trick. Glimmerings is Forge. Cucurbit Prisoner Records doesn't have it. Snare of the Tree is not winter. This is presumably Edge, yeah. Keonad Abydos. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Keonad Abydos. They've made up their minds. They've made up their minds. I'm their appointed leader. I've made up my mind. I'm not. But they're pretty insistent. They've got a bee in their bonnet about my family folklore. You know that immortals, long, can't have any children. Bad things happen if they try. What if a pre-immortal had children? Would there be anything special about those? Ivory Dawn likes to think so. I like to think not, and if I say anything more about that, I'll start to feel like a fool. Thanks, librarian. All right. So we'll get Spentria from that. That'll help us when Oriflammes comes by with another book. But I do need to decide what I want to do with the rest of the day. So it's a couple things that I'm going to do. First of all, we've got Rest and Refreshment Winter. I'm going to earn a little bit of money helping with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. So I'm going to do 2 very quick things. Number 1, I'm going to put the kettle on for some more tea. And because I know this really bugs Vanguard Master, I'm specifically going to find tea that was sitting in a kettle for at least 2 weeks, and then I'm going to boil that. I'm going to start the kettle, but I won't wait for it. I'm not going to do a full break. And when I walk away to do that, I am going to pick up my tablet, which I think actually had a few skills that were on my to-do list for things to find out more about. But yeah, it'll be helpful for me to have those notes. So I'm going to basically take the opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So please enjoy some music, and I should be back in, a minute or 2. actually just realized I forgot to do something today. Okay. So, I don't know how many of you follow both this run and the YouTube run, but on the YouTube run I actually ran into a book that I think solved one of the long-standing mysteries in this playthrough. Now, I haven't quite... I have other things that I can do, so I haven't followed up on that yet. I'm not... So, the dilemma that I have is this. If I just go and do the thing, and it works, I mean, I could be wrong. I've certainly been wrong on that particular one before. It relates to the, was it Edicts Liminal and Edicts Inviolable. And using that in a bed. I actually think I may have figured that out. But... Oh, kettle's boiling already. Back in a sec. Okay. Where was I? So yeah, the one thing I'm kind of reluctant on is because I wasn't able to crack that on its own, and it's this external source that I have for the knowledge. If it works, the drawback here is it kind of feels like this is a solution that kind of comes out of left field. And one of the nice things about being able to do a playthrough from start to finish that people could, in theory, watch from the beginning to end. Not that I think people should in this case. This has gone on long enough. But, you know, for people putting something on in the background to listen to, hey, you know, you could do worse. But yeah, the thing I'm a little bit worried about is that because of the way I've wound up playing Book of Hours, and because I've had access to certain books that I don't necessarily have this time around, there isn't quite the same replicability that some of my other some of my other playthroughs might have. And again, it's not like I think people consider this to be some sort of Bible for the for the game, but just where I can, it's sort of nice to be able to it's just nice to be able to give people a common point of reference. So that's going to be my kind of break glass option, I suppose. But there's another thing that I want to do, and we'll spend some time doing this now. And I've been hoping to sort of fill in the gaps in terms of some of my my various recipes, or some of my different skills. So here we've got the altars to Saint Tentretto. In this case, this has got Moon, Moth, Knock, and Scale, and as it happens, Horns and Ivories works with both. So skill without effort is like tea without boiling water. No one wants to eat tea leaves. Add a soul card. So let's say we're going to go for Scale in this case here. Now, we've got the Bisclaver's Knot, we've got the Secret Threshold, we've got the Old Moment, and we've got a Mystery 10. So this should be fairly straightforward, right? Horns and Ivories with Prentice level Knock creates the Secret Threshold. Or for a Scholar level recipe, if I use this with an egg, it'll hatch something eyeless but pulsing with potential. So that's got to be the larva. Although in this case, I don't think this will work as an egg. So in that case, we should just be able to use that at one of the fireplaces. And looks like it might actually want to force me... very specifically, you need to boil the couple weeks old water, which has been boiled at least 4 or 5 times before Vanguard Master. I think that's your preferred recipe for tea, right? Okay, so it doesn't look like there's a direct knock path to this, but maybe if I can find something with Forge. Otherwise, this will be a little trickier than I thought. Alright. They don't want to make it easy, but we will prevail. So we can take horns and ivories. We'll add the egg. Now, which one of these has got the best knock? Is it really the occult scrap? I'm in a bit of trouble if that's true. No, Curious Hunch. There we go, Chimeric Larva, if I am inclined to make that. So I can actually just strike that from the list. Oops, I underlined it. I don't suppose any of you watch Succession. I gave that a Logan Roy level adjustment. There we go. Okay. Same story with Disciplines of the Hammer. So Disciplines of the Hammer is Edge and Forge, neither of which I think we will find at the altar of Saint Tintretto. But what I want to do here is start focusing a little bit more on the altars in Underground first. This one I don't think... Well, okay, we can do a little something with the Edge, with the Horned Axe. I'm sure the Horned Axe would be thrilled to find... Actually, I guess it would be the Colonel is the one that has a little bit more of an issue with, but... so, as usual, we'll put something edgy in. The undiscovered one. Now, this is an interesting problem. So, it looks like it's both the 15... Both of the 15 edge... or sorry, both of the 15 edge and 15 forge. Now, I'm going to make a guess here that probably it is something to do with the winning move, which is in fact one of the items I don't currently have in my list. So maybe I'd be willing to restore the Arab when the time comes. I don't even know if I have anything with Edge as a memory to work with. Well, apparently the Wormwood Dream. Actually, it's not that hard, so could I add the Serpent Milk? Not at that altar. I could add the Cucurbit Barrette. Then maybe the... Well, I think I'm going to run into the same problem. I'm assuming the arsenic is right out. And then there's the libidic tincture. Yeah, that doesn't work either. Okay, so I'm most tempted here to make the winning move. So I do need a memory, but we have other sources of memories. Not here, though. Well, that wouldn't stop me, though. In fact, I can probably drop the Arab. And I could just put Whist in its place, and we still have enough for the winning move. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. And the reason behind this is I want to... I'd like to have the relevant memory for some of the other Edge stuff that I'm going to be experimenting with. Now, there's a whole bunch of other Forge stuff that I can do. In fact, maybe messing with the Forge stuff first makes a little more sense. Yeah, okay. I am going to make the winning move, but we don't have to do that with Disciplines of the Hammer. I think we already established that St. Tentretto is not going to do it here, so... now, in fairness, I haven't used the Foundry all that much. Maybe we'll make the exception here. So, Orichalcum is one of the first things I want to try here. I can never remember this. There we go. And I'm still short on the forge, so... Oh, well, we do already have a 15. Oh, that's interesting. So there's something potentially beyond Edge or Forge. Yeah, so I already know what happens if I add the Orichalcum, actually. Oh, hang on. So if it's bitter black salts... I learned how to make that's right. I almost forgot. So that's good. Actually, that one, presumably, it's just the edge one that we need now. Which will very likely be the winning move. Okay. Auroral Contemplation. So I think that's probably going to be another edge one. I'm fairly certain it won't work for these, so we need Lantern or Edge for that. I suppose I shouldn't have locked myself into a choice because part of this is experimenting with different sites that I don't use as often. I guess we already really examined the chancel, so... Who else would? Well, you know, the one thing... We haven't really been using the mirrors all that much, so maybe we'll start with the mirrors. So with Auroral Contemplations, Foss is the obvious step. Okay, so we have a recipe for an Invincible Audacity. That requires the winning move. We've got a recipe for Porphyryne. Okay, we're back to some of the fun here. So we have a Lantern and we have an Edge, but we don't have the mystery. We don't have the mystery 10. So it could in fact be something completely unrelated. It could be Sky, for instance. These are always a tough one, because so if we add the memory, we get the winning move. If we add the Lantern, we get an alchemical essence. There's no real indication in terms of what this one would be. So it does make for a little bit of a... It does make for a little bit of a puzzle in terms of how I... Okay, that won't take the Tryst. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Inks of Contain... Oh, God. Inks of Containment's going to be a very dramatic one. So, unfortunately, with Inks of Containment, the low-hanging fruit's gone. We've got Eigengrau, Catwink, Stargall Ink, Ugol Ink. So that's blue and... blue, sorry. I'm turning into Prosciutto Fist. That's Sky and Nectar. So we've got the winter and we've got the moth here. Now we've got Nillikant. Well, actually, I suppose in that case, we would make an inference that it's Moon. And Moon, presumably, would be Saint Tentretto. Although we may not have the qualities that we need to really deliver. But Lethe is one of the moth... I don't think Lethe Lees is what we're looking for. Hopefully I didn't use all the Lethe. That's Turpentine. Maybe I should make a Lethe just so I can